Hello, booze and ghouls. It is once again the most magical season of the year, Halloween time. Now, I have lived in Pennsylvania for about 8 years now. And this year I have decided to embrace my current home state's spooky heritage. Pennsylvania has produced a lot of great horror over the centuries, right? From the first Gothic novel written in the United States, Charles Brockden Brown's Wyland, stay tuned for a video about that one, up through, say, the birth of the modern zombie movie with George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. I've already done a video about Night of the Living Dead, but I will have another video coming up about a Romero film this season. And so Pennsylvania has this great heritage of horror, and that's what we're going to talk about this spooky season. So in this video, we're going to talk about Dan Lantz's film Bloodrunners. So this movie was at least partially filmed in Pennsylvania, hence part of the Pennsylvania horror series, at a place called the Star Hotel in Marcus Hook, PA, which apparently during the Prohibition-era was an actual speakeasy that was used. And Michael McFadden, who wrote or co-wrote, it's not 100% clear from IMDb, but he wrote this film. Other places seem to just attribute it to him, so that's what I'm going to go with. Michael McFadden, born here in PA as well. So, yeah. This is a vampire movie. It is set during the Prohibition era, 1933 to be specific. And it's interesting. So the basic plot line follows this cop named Jack Malone, also played by McFadden, as he sort of corruptly extorts every business in town. This is a small town, seemingly in New Jersey, even though it was filmed in PA. And basically, Malone and his partner and the police chief and everybody is in on this grift, right? They are all there basically just extorting protection money. But there is a new club in town, Chesterfield's. Malone has been scoping it out, and they decide to move in and start collecting their protection money, right? So when they go in, Malone and his partner, they are brought back to the ostensible owner of the club, a guy named Victor Renfield, which is not the most clever and subtle horror movie name in history, but, you know, it's good enough. Victor Renfield is basically like, yeah, whatever, I'm just sort of the face of this thing. It's really Chesterfield, played by Ice-T, who is actually in charge. And they're like, what? An African-American band leader is in charge of the operations rather than the white guy that we are homophobically slagging off. What? And Chesterfield is basically like, yeah, even in 1933, people are not that comfortable with an African-American being in charge of things. So Victor Renfield is the face, I am the brains. We will now give you your money that you want. At which point Malone and his partner collect the money, they head out, and then everybody's like, that was too easy. So Malone and his partner decide that they are going to press Willie, who is a busboy there, who happens to be in love with Anna, who's the daughter of Rosie, who is the owner of the local brothel, where Malone and his partner seem to spend most of their free time. Yes, it's a convoluted set of connections between all of them. But Willie's basically like, hey man, I'm just a busboy. You don't need to beat me up for information. I can't really tell you very much. All I can tell you is that if you stop punching me, I will tell you that sometimes they seem to load bottles onto a truck and then drive it away. So Malone and the other cops set up an ambush because they're like, we were perfectly happy to have you selling illegal alcohol at your club, but bootlegging, that is another story. So the cops end up shooting all three of the people in this bootlegging truck. In the course of the gunfight, Malone gets knocked out, and one of the other cops realizes that one of the bottles is leaking, so he goes to taste it, and he's like, "Oh fuck, this is blood. What is going on here?" And then the three guys that they shot all get up and kill the other cops because they're vampires. What? Who could have ever seen that coming? Anyway, turns out that Chesterfield is the master vampire. Victor Renfield is not a vampire. He's just a human lackey. Hence the connection to Renfield. The Victor, I think, is a connection to Victor Frankenstein, but that's less immediately relevant to this film. But Chesterfield is basically in the blood business. So in his club, he does sell bootleg alcohol to human clients, but he also has a blood business where he basically sort of has a little factory downstairs under the speakeasy in which he keeps humans strapped down to tables and siphons off their blood into bottles. They then sell that blood to other vampires. So there's a couple of things with this. It's kind of an interesting premise because one of the sort of recurring ideas in the film is that everybody is hiding something about themselves, right? That everybody has reason to obscure their true nature in some sense. And so this links the 1920s and 30s bootlegging with the vampirism, right? This sort of idea of, in the 20s and 30s, as a bootlegger, as a moonshiner, rum runner, whatever it was, you were leaving this sort of secret life. Right, even though most of the violations of the Volstead Act seem to be done out in the open and nobody seems to actually really care, you've got that element of it, right? This sort of sense of like, officially we're skirting the law. It's also worth noting that the police are basically just openly shaking down people for protection money. So the idea that this is some sort of like hidden secret underbelly of society is kind of not entirely accurate, but I get where they're going, right? And then, of course, the vampires, like, typically, vampires don't live out in the open in horror movies. They typically try to sort of blend in and pretend we're just regular human beings and definitely don't drink the blood of the living to sustain our life force with excessive supernatural strength and longevity, etc., etc. So yeah, the idea of like everybody has something to hide, and we sort of mask ourselves in order to avoid detection of who we truly are, etc., etc. It's a fine thematic to focus on. This is also interconnected with mental health issues because we learn that Jack Malone is a traumatized World War I veteran. Specifically, he was a sniper who shot a man during a truce. He shot a medic during a truce, and that broke the truce and started the fighting up again. And over the course of the film, he sort of slowly sobers up and recovers these memories. And he realizes that one of the men who was at this gunfight between his co-police and these bootleggers was that man, was that medic that he shot. And he comes to sort of, again, rebuild these memories. And he realizes that what he saw during the war was not just a medic. It was a medic consuming the wounded. Strangely enough, this German medic from World War I, when Malone later speaks to him in the final sort of battle scene, does not have a German accent. So it's not 100% clear why he was a German medic during the war. But anyway, put that aside. So that idea, right, of... Because mental illness is often something, especially in sort of societies where mental illness is stigmatized, like it is in the United States, still... Mental illness is often something that is hidden, repressed, that people do not talk openly about. And so there's, again, this sort of theme of I keep elements of myself hidden from others so that I can control how I am perceived externally. There's some stuff about this film that doesn't make that much sense, that doesn't work that well. Generally, I think it's a fine film. It's an interesting film in some levels. There's some character development aspects that aren't amazing. But there's also just these sort of weird moments where it feels like something else was supposed to have happened in the movie, and it doesn't happen properly, right? So, like, there's two that really stick out to me. So one is, it seems like just a continuity error, because this dude arrives at Rosie's brothel in this, like, fancy car, and he's like, I've got a ton of money. My name is George Washington. And she's all like, shut the fuck up, idiot. You're not George Washington. But outside of the brothel, sitting on the porch, Rosie introduces herself to him and says, yes, you can go inside, which of course is important because he's a vampire, and vampire lore, you can't go into a building unless you are invited in, or private residence unless you are invited in. So we get that bit. Then inside, Rosie introduces herself to him. Seemingly moments after having done so outside. So there's that bit where, like, it kind of feels like something didn't line up there. But then the other one, that's fine, right? That, to me, that seems like just sort of a continuity error. Like, there's some sort of, like, they filmed it two different ways and then they just didn't edit it properly. Okay, cool. It's probably quite low budget. I don't know what the budget was, but I assume it was not massive. Sure, stuff happens. The other one is... Okay, so Rosie has a daughter named Anna. Anna's in love with Willie, who does odd jobs around the brothel. Then he gets a job at Chesterfield's, etc. So there's the whole bit. Like, and Willie becomes sort of the big hero because he and Malone go in to take out the vampires at the end with the help of Luther, who's this sort of crazy preacher that initially is arrested because they believe that he murdered one of the sex workers in this sort of brutal way. It was actually vampires, as we come to learn, but Luther is suspected. So actually, this is another one, right? Because Luther, at some point, just starts being like, hey, Malone, you can't kill them because they're vampires. You need me. I know how to kill vampires. And Malone is just like, yeah, that checks. Just Jack Malone and Willie are both like, all right, insane preacher who we suspect murdered this young woman. I guess we'll just take your word for it that these dudes are vampires, and we will proceed from that assumption. So there's that weird bit. But the bit that actually sort of bothers me, I think that's more of like a we just need to move this shit along type thing, right? Like, they don't have a real sort of, by that point in the film, we're fairly far in to the runtime. They don't really have the time to be like, all right, let's go test Luther's crazy theory and see if it's right. So they just accept that and move along, which is okay. It is what it is. It's a bit lazy, but it's practical for getting to the climax of the film. But anyway, so Rosie has the daughter Anna, and as Jack and Willie are going off to fight the vampires to rescue Anna, who has been made their prisoner, Rosie takes Jack aside, and she's like, Jack, you should know, Rosie is your daughter. I got pregnant before you went to the war, and I never told you because you came back and you were all fucked up with PTSD and alcoholism and stuff. And Jack's just like, okay, I would have gone and saved her anyway. Like, you didn't need to tell me this. And then just nothing happens with that. Right? It feels like this, it's supposed to be this sort of big emotional moment where like they have some sort of like their connection is rekindled or some shit like that. Or like they're like, oh, yes, we really, like, we had a great relationship prior to the war and his trauma and alcoholism, etc., etc. And it doesn't. That doesn't happen at all. Malone and Willie go in, they fight and kill a bunch of the vampires, they rescue Anna, and Jack says nothing to her about being her dad. It's not clear that she knows. That would probably be an awkward conversation when you're having like a fight with vampires and stuff. But still, like, then the film, that like they get out of the speakeasy having killed all of the vampires except Chesterfield, who turns into bats and escapes, although Jack like swings a rosary and kills a lot of the bats with it. Whatever, right? So the three of them get out of this speakeasy. It's morning, the sun is coming out, and they're like, yeah, we made it. End of movie. Why? Why did Rosie have to tell Jack that Anna was his daughter? Like, it's with the way that they have built the film, it serves no plot purpose. It's an extraneous thing that feels like it should be meaningful, that feels like it should contribute something to the film, some sort of depth, some sort of emotional resonance, some sort of weight, but because nothing is done with it, it ends up just sort of falling flat.